Hey guys, guess what? We're back. Sorry about all that inconvenience and stuff. Oz had a meltdown on his computer today. There was some kind of update and it messed up all his settings. I've been through that before, so I totally understand. But anyway, for reals, here is Lierre Keith to talk to us. I was so excited to get introduced to her through a video interview that she was on along with Derek on. Um, yeah, the green flame. That's what it was. The green flame, and talking about civilization, empire, and agriculture. So I am so excited to have you talk about all of those things, and then plus the military and and environmentalism and the difference between what environmentalism should be and what it is right now.
hmm
Those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So let's just start off with defining agriculture.
Okay. So, yeah, that's where all of this starts.
Audio's
That
working
means,
good, by the way.
cool, we are on it. So, we have to understand what agriculture is if we're going to understand kind of the root of this whole problem. And this takes a few minutes. Like it can't be done in a soundbite. So it's a little hard because it's like you got to hang on for the whole rollout. But
That's why
here
we
we
have
go.
the long form media
That's
here.
right. That's right.
Yes.
It really, yeah, it takes time. So, I mean, it took me 20 years to figure this out. So I'm going to condense it for you all. Um, all right, agriculture. You take a piece of land and you clear every living thing off it. And I mean down to the bacteria. And then you plant it to human use. So it's biotic cleansing. I mean, we've all heard of, um, ethnic cleansing, terrible things like this. But that's just humans. This is every living thing is cleared off that land. So the plants, the animals, the microorganisms, they're all gone. They've got nowhere else to go. That was their home. So it's also mass extinction. And at this point in history, we are losing 200 species every day.
Right.
That's every day, 200 species. Once
At
they're gone
least. At least.
forever. I mean, yeah, at
Yeah.
least it probably is more at this point. When I first started doing this public talk on this subject, it was 120, then it was 150, then it was 180,
Yeah.
now it's 200. And it's really horrifying to me to look back 6, 7 years ago and see earlier drafts of some of my talks, and literally that number is just crossed out and then crossed out and then crossed out, and it just keeps going up. So the problem is accelerating in completely the wrong direction. Anyway, so you clear every living thing off it, and then you just plant it to human use. So there's a number of problems. First is that mass extinction. Second problem is that every time you do this, you're destroying the soil. And soil is the basis of life, or land life anyway. The oceans have their own thing going. But if we want to continue to live on the land, we do need soil. And the most famous quote about this is, we owe our entire existence to 6 inches of soil and the fact that it rains. And that is true.
Makes
Um,
sense.
I mean, 1 tablespoon of topsoil can contain 1 million different living organisms. That's a million different creatures.
Wow.
And those are the creatures that are doing the basic work of life, mostly degrading. The plants are primary producers, and those microorganisms are the basic degraders. And that's really all you need for the cycle of life. Somebody has to take sunshine and basic energy and turn it into matter. And that's what plants do. And it's an absolute miracle that they do it. And then when they die, somebody has to break down their bodies and make those nutrients available again to this thing we call the cycle of life. Now you add animals in, and that's fine. It's just a few layers of complication, but we don't really add much to that, producing and degrading, because we don't really do either. You've got animals that eat plants, and then animals that eat animals, but you just need the plants, and then the degraders. That's all, the producers and the
Yeah,
degraders.
you could
So
like the
that's
life
it. They
can
would be fine.
survive.
Yeah, and they actually did okay
Yeah.
for a while without any of us, so that's
Right.
great.
Right.
But so there are elders, and there's so many different indigenous traditions that talk about plants as the elders, and that's true. Just evolutionarily speaking, they created that the cradle of soil and the blanket of the atmosphere that made animal life possible. They did that for us. That's
Right.
an amazing thing again. So we're killing all of that by doing agriculture. We remove them all from the only place they have to call home. Okay, mass extinction. Now you're also destroying the soil every time you do that. I had a biology professor when I was 19 who said the following sentence: the moment you put a plow to soil, you degrade that soil. And it was a horrifying kind of realization. It was quite clear he was telling the truth. He had all kinds of pictures. He'd been studying this for decades. He'd been all around the world. And
Right.
here at age 19, I had been a vegan for 3 years, and I thought I had found the answer in this agricultural diet. And the moment he said that, I realized that I was completely wrong. Never mind, it took me another 17 years to put the rest of it together. But in that moment,
Right.
I could see that it was true, and that we had dug ourselves a very bad hole that was becoming faster and faster a very deep grave,
Yeah.
because there's all these people, they need to be supported with food. Um, every day, we are making the situation worse by continuing to do agriculture, and yet every day there are more people. So we need to keep taking over more land to do more
I've
agriculture.
heard you say
Now
we're
we're
backed in a
destroying
corner.
farmland. That's it.
So
We're at the edge
yeah.
of a cliff here. By 1950, the world was out of topsoil. So it's complete. Every continent that agriculture could take, it has now taken. Okay,
Right.
so I mean, it's over, right? This is it. So by the year 1950, the planet should have. I mean, essentially, we were out of topsoil, and what should have happened was collapse. Now, this is the fate of every single agricultural society that's ever existed. There have been 34 civilizations. Every last one of them ends in collapse, and that's because ultimately you're drawing down the soil, and the soil is the basis of life. So the moment that the soil is gone, you've got nothing left to feed all those people.
So we get to the
Um,
Green Revolution and
well, the Green Revolution, yes. So World War II is over, and what's happened over the decade or two before that is that scientists have figured out how to get easily accessible nitrogen out of fossil fuel. Now, this was originally needed for war efforts because that's what bombs are made out of. But then there's various blockades and wars. A lot of the nitrogen was coming from bat guano, believe it or not, caves in South America. But of course, then there's blockades across the ocean. You can't get your supplies through. So scientists are sort of playing beat the clock to figure out how to make nitrogen essentially. And there's this thing called the Haber-Bosch process, and those were the chemists who figured it out. And so this meant that World War II, whatever. So anyway, lots of bombs are made out of easily accessible oil and gas at that point. It's a very energy intensive process, but it could be done. So now World War II is over. These munitions factories are just kind of idle. And of course, scientists, I mean, for almost 100 years before that, scientists had already figured out nitrogen is one of the main things you need to grow crops. It's sort of basic to life. And they saw that the world was running out, that we were using up soil, that only so much manure could be produced. What is going to happen to the human populations? This was already a grave concern to a lot of biologists and soil scientists. So all of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, we figured it out. We can do it using fossil fuel. So they did. And all of these bomb factories essentially were turned into fertilizer factories. So 1950 is sort of the beginning of the Green Revolution. They bred plants that would just grow shorter and shorter and shorter and make seeds bigger and bigger and bigger. At this point, those genomes can't be stretched any farther. You can't make wheat or whatever any shorter with any bigger seeds and not have them just collapse from their own weight. So we've reached the end. I mean, the Green Revolution isn't going to produce any more than it is now. We're pretty much done with what wheat and soy and whatever can produce. But the point really is that if you're eating grain, you're eating oil on a stalk right now. And that's because we've used up the soil, we've skinned the planet alive, and we're eating fossil fuel. Instead of solving this problem, it's just quadrupled the problem. So the human population quadrupled in that time period. And we are still faced with this ultimate collapse. It's just
right.
we've put it off to the future, and now it's globally even worse. So honestly, it was not a solution. It was just a stopgap measure that only accelerated the problem. So one thing we have to understand is why agriculture is so destructive. So in nature, there's two kinds of plants. You've got annuals and perennials, and the perennials are deep-rooted, long-lived plants, and those two things go together. They're deep-rooted because perennials live a long time, and that means they have time to get really big. So if you think about a tree, nobody could grow that big in one summer, right?
Right.
They live way more than 1 year. They grow many, many years. Some
Right.
trees where I live, trees live 2,000 years. I live in the redwoods, and they're older
Oh.
than Christianity. I mean, these are amazing trees, right? And there's, giant clumps of trees that are essentially the same organism. You can find this in different places around the world. There's that one in, I think, Colorado called Pando, they've named it, which means I spread in Latin. And the thing is like 8,000 years old, and it's this absolutely gigantic, just sort of one tree, grown from the same roots. It's just amazing. Anyway, trees can do that. Grasses do that, perennial grasses. They grow a long time and they're very deeply rooted. Now, the point of deep roots, we have to understand, first function is it holds the soil in place. The
Right.
moment you remove those roots, there's nothing, literally the matrix, there's nothing left. There were farms on the first day of the Dust Bowl in South Dakota, lost all of their topsoil in one day. That soil was 12 feet deep when the European
Oh,
conquerors first got there. Nothing left. And you can go look at the photographs of that soil moving across the continent, these giant mountains of soil moving across the continent, blew out into the Atlantic Ocean, eventually, comes down in the rain and whatnot. There were ships at sea that were like buried in soil. And that was all that topsoil blowing across the continent. So that's what happens when you rip up the roots. There's nothing to hold it in place. That's
right.
problem number one. Problem number two, those deep roots are what provide waterways or channels for the water to actually enter the soil. Without those channels, the rain just can't find a way in, and it just rolls off the surface, and it takes
Makes sense.
whatever is left of the soil with it. So any kind of even a tiny bit of slope, it will run downhill to the nearest river, stream, any kind of waterway, and destroy it. Now you've got all that silt flooding into the water, and all the fish die because they can't breathe. They're smothered. It also changes the temperature of the water. I mean, a whole bunch of really bad things happen. So you're not just killing the soil, you're now killing the local streams. Eventually, those flow into the ocean. You've got even more problems. So all along, I mean, this is just cascading horrors all along the way. So the water table cannot be recharged. That's one of the
Right.
main things that those roots do during rainy seasons, snow melt, whatever. All that water is absorbed. And then during the long summers, when there's not as much rain and it's much hotter, those deep-rooted perennials, the same thing. They now bring the water back up to the surface of the soil in their bodies, and the rest of the community of life can eat them and get some moisture. A lot of animals actually don't drink. They don't have what they
Rabbits
call
don't need to
thirst.
drink.
Yeah, they just eat. But if
Yeah,
there's no water in the plants, then
unless
there's
you
no
feed them.
water for the rabbits,
If you feed them
right?
alfalfa pellets, then they do need to drink. But if you feed them fresh
Too dry,
vegetables,
but it's
then
fresh,
yeah,
right?
then they
But
don't
nature
need to
intended,
drink.
and
Right.
they don't. And it's true and this is a problem with a lot of cats. You get them dry cat food, they don't have a strong thirst impulse. They get the urinary tract infections. It's the same problem.
Yep.
So a lot of animals don't really need to drink because they've evolved to just get it from plants. But if
Yep.
the perennials aren't there doing their job, then there is no water for the rest of us during those long dry months. So everything just starts to collapse, and eventually the water table gets so low that even trees and grasses can't reach it anymore.
Yeah,
And
and it's
everything dies.
from what I understand, our underground water is not replenishing as fast as it's being used anyway. Like it's going away really
Yes.
fast.
And there are places all around the globe, including in the United States, where they are now using oil drilling equipment to get to the water. That's how far down the water table has
Yeah,
shrunk.
it's
And
getting
if
scary.
anybody thinks this is sustainable, we've got to face this, just the level of horror that is here. This is
Yeah.
just a huge emergency on every level, and we are not prepared to face this. Okay, so
No.
that's another thing. Now, another thing that plants do, this is the third big important thing about perennials, is because they can get down so deep into the soil, they actually get down to the bedrock and they can break up that rock. You and I cannot eat rock. We have no way to get those minerals on their own. The only creatures that can do that are plants in conjunction with bacteria. It's actually the bacteria that are using the acids to break up the rock, but they're doing it in conjunction with the plants. Like they live on the plant roots, they exchange things with the plant. So it's a symbiotic relationship, but together they break up rock, they get the minerals, bring them back up, and that's ultimately where the rest of us get them, one way or another. Again, without those plants, we can't do it. We have no way. You cannot eat rock. Like it's just not a thing humans can do.
Right.
So without this whole community, you start to see how fragile we are as animals. Like none of this we can do for ourselves. We can't make oxygen. We can't do primary production. We don't do the degrading. We don't recharge the water table. We don't get the minerals. Like we are so dependent. And this is why, again, you find these wisdom traditions all around the world of indigenous people who are like, humans need to be humble. Look at our place in the web of life. We need to be so humble. We don't do any of this. We are
Right.
so dependent. We've got to be thankful to everybody else who does this for us. And We've lost that completely in this culture.
Oh yeah, we're not attached
Not
anymore.
even anywhere in our consciousness that we
No.
need to be humble and grateful. Okay, so those are the three things that perennials do. Now, this is what agriculture is. It's exactly the opposite. There are no perennials. They have been removed. There is no way to do any of those functions. What you've got instead is annuals. So year after year, you're just planting wheat or corn or soy or whatever. The roots are not long. You're not recharging the water table. You're not replenishing the minerals, and you're not building topsoil. You're destroying it. This is
Right.
the problem. So we've skinned the planet alive. We've had 10,000 years. We have trashed the planet. There's nothing left. 99% of the world's old growth forests and 98% of the world's prairies are gone.
Yeah.
We've taken it all. It's gone. So this is the problem. Okay, so agriculture. What else does agriculture do? Well, it destroys the living world, obviously, but more, it destroys human societies as well. So the moment you start doing this, you create a surplus. So there's a surplus of grain. And what this means is that, okay, a few things, but agricultural societies develop into what's called civilization. Now, that word just means the root of that is just cities. So it's a way of life based on cities. So it means people living in concentrations of population dense enough that they require the importation of resources.
Right.
They can't get it from where they live. If you think about a city, you can't grow food there, you can't hunt and gather there. It's basically just stone or concrete or mud or cement or whatever, but there's no natural world anywhere. It's not a village where you could just go to the river and get some fish. No, it's concrete, right? That's it. So this is the problem. The people living there now have to go out and get their food, their water, their energy from someplace else.
Right.
Because they've used up their own. So they have to go out and get that from somewhere else. From that point forward, it doesn't matter what lovely, beautiful, nonviolent values people might hold in their hearts. Those people are dependent on imperialism and genocide.
Right. This
Because
is
nobody,
this is
this
the
is it.
intriguing part. This is so important.
Nobody willingly gives up their land, their water, their trees, their fish. But because the city has used up its own, they have to go out and get those from somewhere else. And that is the last 10,000 years in sentences. That is the pattern of civilization over and over. You end up with a bloated power center surrounded by conquered colonies because they're dependent on it. They have to go out and get it. Nobody's just going to hand over their river. You've got to go take the water. So agriculture makes that inevitable, and it also makes it possible. Because you have this temporary surplus of grain, people specialize. And the very first thing they specialize into is a military, because you have to go out and conquer your neighbors. So immediately you've got a class of people whose entire job is war, whose job is to go out and get that stuff and bring it back into that bloated power center. So there's this whole hierarchy. There'll be the king, who's often a priest. You've got, so that's, sort of the joint function up there. And then you've got sort of the nobles just below the king. And then you've got this huge section of the army that's kind of, the next level. Then you might have some skilled craftspeople beneath that who, do arts and crafts and, or at least trying to do some good things. But then at the bottom, you've got the bulk of the population, and there's slaves.
Right.
Because agriculture is backbreaking labor. And that's the other problem. Your basic life as a hunter-gatherer is honestly pretty easy. You go out, you get some fish, you get a deer, you get whatever. But mostly, it doesn't take, exactly. It doesn't take much work. It's done for you. You just go out and find it, and then you eat, and it's fun. But, most people who live in that kind of an economy, it's maybe 15, 18 hours a week of work to provide for your basic needs. Farming is dawn to dusk. Like, nobody catches a break.
The only problem is there's not enough land for everybody to do that. Hunter-gatherer.
Well, we've kind of wrecked it, haven't we?
Yes,
Right?
we kind of have.
This is the problem. So, and every time, so you've got the power center. They conquer the colonies. These are people generally who are living in a good way. They're sustainable. They're generally either hunter-gatherers or sort of the beginning of agriculture. They're conquered. All their stuff is taken. This one collapses, then it moves over and starts again here. They conquer a further region. Boom. Now you need a new continent because you've used up all your stuff. So now you go to the next continent. Then you go to the next continent. There's no continents left. It's been done everywhere. And this is the problem that we're in, right? This is the ledge that we're up against now.
So what do we
So
do?
that's, well, this is the problem. I mean, we can talk about places like, ancient Athens, which is supposed to be the great birthplace of Western democracy, and in many ways it is, but not over 90% of the people who lived there were slaves.
Yeah. What about Baton? Do you know
Um,
about Baton?
I know a little bit about Bhutan. The things I know are not great. I don't know too much about the economics between men. I know that violence against women there is horrendous.
Oh, is
So
it really?
there's no way I'm going to call this an egalitarian society. Also, I mean, all their electricity comes from dams, so they're already wrecking.
Oh,
Sort of,
okay.
yeah. I mean, it's just,
I all I know is
we,
their gross national
yeah,
happiness
the
and
happy. I
their
know it's a wonderful idea.
wildness areas.
Hopefully they can get better. It's like,
Yeah.
they are turned in somewhat the right direction, but there's so many problems still. I have a hard time holding that up as like some great
Okay.
wonderful place, because the more I've heard about it, I actually know somebody who's from there, so it's been
Oh, really?
interesting to,
Well, that's
yeah, just
good to
one. My
know.
whole life I've met one, which, it's a tiny little place. Why would they be here? But it's just kind of interesting. Wow, you're actually from there. Never met anybody from there. Anyway,
That's cool.
so yeah, so we've got this problem. So that's what's happened. So you have the military, you have slavery, you have this sort of inevitable decline of life around the globe. We've skinned the planet alive, and all of this is inevitable. Like, this is not agriculture on a bad day. This is what it is, and this is the inevitable process of it. There are plenty of people who come before me who have said, like, this is the worst mistake we ever made, human race. Like, nobody really even knows why we did it. That's the part that's the most intriguing. Like, why did anybody ever did it? It's backbreaking labor. It's piss poor nutrition. What in the world was anybody thinking? And the only theory I've seen that makes any sense is, honestly, grains are addictive.
Hmm.
You
That
get a
makes
tiny
sense.
little, you get a
Carbs
tiny
there.
hit every time. It's gluten, especially, turns into a substance called gluteomorphin in your digestive tract. That is exactly what it sounds like. So you get a little happy hit every time you eat it. And we have all met those people who say, I couldn't live without bread. Please don't take my pasta away. I will die. Yes, you do feel that way. That is a true
Yeah,
thing. You are addicted to the
that makes sense.
gluteomorphines that you are eating 5 times a day. I completely understand. Yeah,
And now
it's
they're
tough.
even worse because they're filled with glyphosate and
I know.
radiation, the
Even
rice and stuff,
harder. I
radiation.
know, I know.
So,
So
but
also, so the other thing about agriculture that a lot of people don't know, so we talk about the beginning of the fossil fuel age is about year 1800, and that's the beginning of global warming. It's true, it's a massive accelerant to global warming. There's no question we've changed the climate. But what's interesting is, if you back up that in that hockey stick graph, right? If you back that up to about whatever 8,000 years ago, the beginning of agriculture, particularly rice agriculture, we added as much carbon to the atmosphere from that point to 1800 as we have from 1800 till now. So the same amount of carbon was added from agriculture, and all of that carbon is simply the soil being degraded, the soil literally being destroyed, and the carbon being released, and just, that's it. It goes up into the atmosphere. It's all been vaporized, and that's what it's been turned into.
wow. So, what do you think about people who want to do hydroculture? I mean, don't you still have to mine the land for
Yes,
the chemicals,
it's
the
silly. I mean, it's just
fertilizers, and
massive energy, more energy intensive than just letting.
it seems like
There's
that
no
to me.
way.
You still
Yeah,
have to mine the minerals to
of
feed the
course.
plants. They just don't live on water. And then the clean water is going to be an issue, or is an issue already. So,
No, there's no solution in that kind of stuff. Honestly, to me, there are solutions, and I don't think that they are terrifying to consider. I just think every institution on the planet is essentially based in the wrong direction. So we've
yeah.
got two things that have to happen. One is we need to restore what we've destroyed.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
actually not that hard. We just have to stop destroying. We don't even have to actively do very much. Just simply stop
Leave it alone.
destroying.
Yeah, and
Leave it alone.
let
Life
nature
wants to live.
move
It
back
will
in.
come
Yes.
back. In fact, we don't really even know how to do it. Like, the trees and the animals and the bacteria, they are all a community. They know how to call to each other. They know how to rebuild it. We can help a little, and that's a good thing. But honestly, we just have to let them do it, and they will come home.
I think I talked
Because,
about that with Derek last week.
yeah,
Actually,
probably. So that's one
sounds
thing. We
familiar.
just need to let it repair, which means we
Mhm.
just need to stop destroying. So for instance, here's a statistic. If we could try to repair all the, even 75% of the world's trashed out grasslands, and they've been trashed by agriculture. So it means we need to stop doing that. But if we could help them repair, it would take about 15 years, but we could sequester all the carbon that's been produced since the beginning of the industrial age. So carbon would probably drop to 330 parts per million, which is well under that 350 red line. And that's all it would take. That is how good grasses are at sequestering carbon. That is literally
Wow.
what they do, is they build soil. Now you have to understand that it's not the grasses alone. And this again gets a
It's
little
not at your
technical.
lawn, though, right?
I mean, you're welcome to try to replace your lawn with native grasses. I mean, that would be a fabulous thing. There are so many animals that would love to come and live on your front lawn, and do their part to keep that going.
I stopped weeding
Anything,
mine and
no, go
putting
for it.
it's just clover and there's some crabgrass and there's dandelions and that's fine with me. I'm good with
Go for it. I mean,
that.
completely go for it. So the thing about grasslands is that they didn't evolve alone. And this is how none of us are who we truly are without our communities. Okay. So hold that as sort of the concept here. So this is what happens on a prairie. You've got the grasses, which have roots that are, 12 feet deep, 20 feet deep, like just super deep. And there's a lot of them. So every square meter should have about 25 different species of plants. Okay. So lots of different plants, very deeply rooted, all doing this. The thing about grasses is that they evolved being eaten, they evolved being grazed.
Right.
So unlike other plants, because most plants grow from the tip, like I look out my window right now and I can see the redwood trees and the various stuff that's out here, not the deciduous trees, but the kind of evergreen trees. And the tips of all the branches are bright green, right? That's the new growth from this year. And so most plants grow from the end. Not true for grasses. They grow from the bottom. And
Right.
that's because they're used munched
Hmm.
by a bison or a cow or pick an elk, I don't care, pick whatever, but that's what they do, they eat them. And the act of being eaten stimulates the root production of those grasses, so right away they need each other. That's what stimulates deeper roots in plants. So then it gets really hot and dry in the summer. The life on the surface of that grassland kind of goes underground for a while. We don't see it because we don't live there. We live on the top of it. But underneath is where all the activity is happening, where it's moister and cooler, where the bacteria can live. So they need those deep roots to stay alive during that hot, dry season. What's happening on the surface of the soil, though? So here you've got this ruminant coming along, eating the grasses, and that cow or that bison is not actually eating the grass. What they're doing is feeding the grass to the bacteria that live inside them in the rumen. They've usually got four stomachs, and it's just this giant vat of bacteria, right?
Hmm.
So it's too dry on the surface of the soil because it's so hot. The bacteria can't stay there; it kind of dries up. But again, ruminants evolved doing this. So inside them, that's where the bacteria lives. The bacteria figured out how to work with the bison to stay alive. And it's an exchange, it's a symbiotic relationship. And the cow says, or the bison says, I will feed you this grass. And the bacteria says, great, I can live inside you. I will eat the grass for you. I'll have a good life in here where I like to live. And then you can eat me. And what the bison is actually eating is the bacteria. So they take this nutrient poor, essentially just straight up cellulose, is all grass is, and they turn it into protein and fat in the bodies of bacteria. And that's what the bison or the cows are eating.
Right.
And
Well,
so
it
they
used to
need
be
each other.
bison, not cows.
Yeah,
It,
which I don't even care at this point. The
okay.
situation is so desperate. I do not care what ruminants we get out there. We can fix that later. Like, of course, I want bison back. At the end of the day, they're really the only ones who are going to survive long term. But I don't care. Like, we have an emergency the size of land and sea and sky, and we've got to get the carbon out. So I don't care if the farmers who live there, the people on the range, they want to use cows for a while. I'm really not going to argue the point. I don't care. Use cows. It can be done. People are doing it. Totally cool. We honestly, 50 years from now, we can argue about it. Please put
Right.
the bison back eventually, but we'll get there. So
I hope
that's
so.
why you have to have grasses and ruminants together. The grasses alone will just turn into desert because nobody's grazing them, and so during those dry times, there's no degraders keeping the cycle moving. The graders live inside the rumen of those giant animals. That's how it all evolved together in those dry climates. So you need all of those characters. You need the grass, you need the bacteria, you need the ruminants, and they all need to be working together. Now, when they're in place, life comes back. And I've seen these places. You can go online and look. It is absolutely amazing when people know what they're doing, how to apply the correct pressure to the ruminants. how life will come back to these absolutely degraded areas. So the role now we've got another person, another creature we have to add to this, and that is the predators. So whether it's wolves, whether it's mountain lions, whether it's grizzly bears, or whether it's humans, our role is to keep those ruminants moving. Is if they just stay in place, they will degrade it. And
Right.
this is what's happened all around the globe, is that people don't act like predators, we don't know to move them off, and we don't behave like wolves. We did once upon a time, we don't anymore. And that's the pulse of the prairie. That's literally the heartbeat that keeps the blood moving, and the blood being the ruminants. They've got to keep moving or the place
But we
dies.
fenced them all in, so
Yeah, I know, and it's completely wrong. So they need to raise hard and then move, and that's what the predators do. They
yeah.
make them move, and they make them move quickly. And when you do that, kind of in a cycle, observing your land, observing the sort of S curve of how grasses grow, and there are people who can teach you how to do this. The place will come back to life pretty much overnight, and it's amazing what will happen. So, and bison do other amazing things too, like they've got those horns on their heads. So they make wallows. They put their heads down and they roll those horns around and they make these holes. They dig holes with their heads. They're not doing it for themselves because it doesn't really help them at all, but they somehow know where the moisture is, like where the water table is a little higher. And when they do that, the little holes will fill up with water, and they're making like little tiny water holes for
Oh,
all these other creatures. So there's all these people who have brought bison onto their land, that hasn't been there for 100 years or something, and watching just basic bison behavior, you'll see them make wallows. They make those little tiny water holes, and within 48 hours, there will be birds you haven't seen for 100 years. There'll be small mammals that no one's noticed before. You'll have reptiles, like all kinds of creatures come because there's water, and they need water, and the water attracts them. And it's this amazing thing how
that's
bison decide.
awesome.
Yeah, it's so. And prairie dogs, we could talk forever about what prairie dogs do, how they
Oh yeah, I
manipulate.
know. I talked to Deanna about
Yeah,
prairie
no, you
dogs.
know about prairie dogs. So there should be
Yes.
5 billion prairie dogs on this continent. There should be 60 million bison on this continent. They've all been destroyed.
Yeah, it's ecosystems like the web of life,
I know.
and
There
it's
it
just
is. But that's how
entirely
we need all
messed
of
up.
them. So everybody needs to understand that. Like grasses have got to have ruminants, and it's not till you put them all together that you're going to have soil building again. It'll just degrade to desert otherwise. So, and that's our role as those apex predators. Keep them moving, and
Yeah.
that's what we eat. So the bacteria eats the grass. The cow or the bison eats the bacteria. We eat the cow or the bison. Ultimately, we die too. We get fed back into the soil. The soil eats us all, and it keeps that cycle moving. And that's what we destroyed when we started doing agriculture.
Right. I agree, and I just wish I could figure out a way we could do that when they're putting up houses in every empty pasture out here. So
It's
like
dreadful. Yes, it's
it's
dreadful. Yeah,
it's disgusting to watch. I was like, stop building houses. We're in a desert for Christ's
I
sake.
know.
I don't
I know.
want more houses here.
Where is this water going to come from? I mean, they're
Uh,
shipping it all in from God knows where, right?
yeah,
It's insanity.
we don't.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll run out of groundwater really really soon. The way they're
They're just
going.
in total denial. I don't understand how
Uh,
anybody thinks this can continue
I don't either. I think it's a lot the religious people because they just think the world was put here for
for
them.
them. And it
And
wasn't.
yeah, I know.
It just wasn't. I mean, we're one species among millions, and we're not super special. We do our thing, and that's great. But I don't know how anybody can think we're so great when we don't produce and we don't degrade. We do nothing that's actually useful,
Yeah, the rest of the world could
particularly.
live great
Yeah.
without us. That's
And they would, and they have, and they will again. Like that's just reality, people. You're not super special. But it's okay not to be super special. Like for me, I get such incredible relief from knowing I am this tiny little speck in the giant cosmos. It's all okay. It's
it's fine.
fine. Like it doesn't matter. It's all right. No matter what happens, it's a tiny little speck in a giant cosmos. That's all it is.
Right.
It's fine. Like it doesn't need to be anything else. It's a nice little speck. I had a good time.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I can't wait for civilization to crash because
Well, it's I mean, here we are, right? It's one way or another. So the
it's
other
going
part of
to.
this,
I don't know.
no, it is. It's inevitable because it's based on drawdown and overshoot. Like that's what it is. Literally, that's the pattern of civilization. There's no other way it can end. So
Yeah.
the other thing about this whole conversation is, a lot of course, we're all worried about there's too many people, and there are. Look at that little hockey puck curve of
Hmm.
fossil fuel. It's the same little curve for human population. There are 6 billion people who are only here because of fossil fuel. This is
Right.
literally what they're eating, and that's how the food gets to them. And we never should have done that, but we did. So here we are. So half of the pregnancies every year are either unplanned or unwanted.
Yep, I talk about that a
It's
lot.
not actually hard to figure out how to do this. And this really has been studied backwards, forwards, inside out. The number one thing you can do to drop the birth rate, number one thing,
Give
teach
women
your women.
control and educate
That's it. That's it. That's exactly it. And we should care about that anyway because
Yeah,
women
we
matter.
should. We
We
should.
should. Girls matter. They are human. They deserve human rights. And if you give them those human rights, you know what? We do it. Like
As
it
someone who
actually
was
turns out.
not allowed to be have my tubes tied when I was 23,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
tough. I know. I
it,
know.
the guy,
So,
my husband could get a vasectomy, but they
yeah.
wouldn't give me a.
They wouldn't let you do it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. I've
it's
heard that
crap.
story so many times. It's horrible.
It's not right.
The thing about the sort of natural kind of human impulse, as it turns out, all things being equal, if everybody has what they need, enough food, enough medical care, and some ability to make decisions, as it turns out, most women want about 2 children, which
Mhm.
is replacement levels.
Yeah,
Like
especially if
everybody,
some
like
don't
just
want
we
children.
just sort of normally that's what we have. There's some women who will want more, and there's a bunch of women who won't want any, but it averages out to about
Mhm.
2. And right now, there are 34 countries around the globe that already have either negative or stable population growth. It's
Right.
not that hard. Like we actually could do this, and in a
But
few
the Western
generations.
countries are the ones that need the most population control because
Yes, because we use way more. We use
yeah, we
way more than our
consume
share.
way
We
more than the
consume
other
way
countries. So.
more. So I mean, a lot of the Western countries already have kind of stable growth. So what we really need is negative population growth.
Mhm.
However, some of them already do have that. So that's
Yeah,
good. Like it's headed in the right direction. And then the other countries, yes, raise the status of women a little bit and it really works. It's just dream come true. So it's not actually
exactly.
that hard. Like we actually have solutions and none of them are high tech and none of them involve human rights horrors. The girls in the grasses. That's
None
it.
of them involve raping the land to build
No,
windmills
no.
and solar
It's
panels and build a whole new
not going to help.
infrastructure.
None of that's going to help. None of that is solution. It's based on the same industrial infrastructure. All of it relies on oil and gas and coal, just like the rest of it. You
Mhm.
can't do it without massive amounts of fossil fuel. And at
Right.
the end of the day, it really doesn't even produce that much energy. Plus, the kind of industrial economy that everybody seems to want can really only happen with fossil fuel. There's oil and gas are functionally irreplaceable because of
Right.
their density and their your ability to transport them. Nothing else is going to replace that. So we really need to come to grips with this. This way of life is over. The only question is what's going to be left of the planet when it finally collapses. And if we could take control, as citizens, get the institutions all pointed in the right direction, face the nature of the problem, and then the scale of the solutions, it could be done nonviolently. It could be done in complete accordance with human rights, and we could make a very beautiful place. So the question is, are we going to do that?
Probably not because first of all, the media politicians are not telling everybody the truth of the situation of where we're at. So I mean, they downplay it and they say this new growth opportunity is going to take care of everything. And so the minute they get a Green New Deal, everyone's going to go to sleep and go, oh, it's all solved. Meanwhile, it'll
You,
be
you
10 times
can't
worse.
you can't have infinite growth on a finite planet,
Exactly.
right? I mean, I think any 5-year-old could figure that out.
I
You
know I
can't
did.
have infinite growth on a finite planet. It is that simple.
Hmm.
So even if you don't want to talk about civilization, at least, dear God, talk about capitalism. It can't be done.
Hmm.
Like we're at the end now. We've taken it all. We
Hmm.
can't just keep growing and consuming.
Yeah,
I don't
capitalism depends
understand.
on eating nature, and a lot of
Yeah,
people don't see that their clothes, their computers, their watches, everything,
they
it comes
don't
from
grow
nature.
on trees. No, it's like it takes living communities, it turns them into dead commodities, and then takes dead commodities and turns them into private wealth. So
Right.
you've got a few people over here saying, oh, the private wealth is the problem. All of it should be for everyone. I was like, no, that's not actually the problem. The problem is living communities into dead commodities. That's the actual problem where it needs to
Yeah.
stop.
What did you
You
say
know?
about the different people, like the distribution of resources versus the conservation of resources? What was that? Some people look at it.
Okay, so there's people like sort of that's where they draw the line is they say, well, the problem is that we're distributing it in a bad way. So we're only giving it to some people and it should be distributed across everybody. And I understand that impulse, but honestly, that's not the issue. The issue is that we're taking living communities and turning them
Right.
into dead commodities. That's where the problem is. Not who gets the goodies at the end, but
Right.
that actual process is the problem.
Yeah.
So that's
We should all be
industrialization
living
right
a
there.
super simpler life and not just eating the planet.
Yeah,
So
and people don't want to face that. They really want to have all the technology they're addicted to.
Oh, just
We
get
can have
solar
all this.
panels, wind, and
It'll be
everything,
fine somehow. Like
and
you
yeah,
and I, we cannot build a solar panel. It's utterly dependent on industrial mining, and then an industrial scale distribution of all that. So you can't do it in your backyard.
yeah,
And I'm going to contrast that to things like passive solar, which my house is passive solar. It's super easy. Anybody can learn the basic concepts, in a weekend workshop. It's not hard. And the sun shines for everyone. Like that's the kind of stuff that honestly people knew all around the globe. Like you look at sort of traditional kinds of architecture. I mean, I lived in New England for 24 years, that salt box house. Like, yes, the south side and then the north side, and it captures as much sun as you can and makes the wind be a lot, easier to
yeah,
handle. Like, oh, that's just basic. Everybody figured it out from living there. Or, all around the globe, people have got these ways to just store sunshine, and that's our share, but we don't get more than that.
yeah. I agree with that.
More than
Gosh,
that. And
that's amazing. I really do like that. Um, but there's lots of people in the chat.
okay, what do we got?
If you have final words, then I'll just unless you just want to go right into comments and stuff.
No, that's fine. Let's hear what if people have good questions. I don't want to hear stupid questions. I only
No
like
stupid questions.
good
Keep on
questions.
topic. No stupid questions, people. Let's get some.
Because I think there are such things as stupid questions. I'm sorry, but some of them really are stupid.
Okay,
But I'll
get.
get one of those. We're not wasting our time with just insults hidden as questions. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not taking abuse. Okay, let's do it.
Okay, no abuse to my wonderful guests. I will
I've had it. I'm just not taking
not
any
do it.
more. So let's have
I
a
don't
good one.
blame you. I've been there.
Okay.
Let's see. Basil always has good things to say. To
Who's
believe that
Basil?
Basil Peterson. He's
Oh, that's nice. You know somebody by first name.
Oh, I know a lot of them by their first name.
That's great. It's like a whole you've got a
It's a
little
it's a
friendship tree
community.
there.
It's a
That's
community
great.
for
That's so
sure.
great.
Okay, so Basil says to believe that you can have exponential growth on a finite planet, you are either insane or an economist.
Giving you the big heart here, Basil. That's exactly it. I have
Thank you,
nothing to add to
Basil.
that. Yeah, Basil gets the heart.
All right, Julie says eradicating nukes and controlling corporations is the key.
It's a big part of it.
It would help. I don't know. Um,
The planet will not stand as long as this doctrine that corporations are people is a thing. I
yeah,
mean, that just has to go. There's no way to. I mean, that's like the very first step.
right. That would be helpful. That's for sure. Jean says the bribery. I don't know if I pronounced that. People here assign each family or person a responsibility to take care of different things. Keeper of the mangrove, keeper of the creek, keeper of the bees,
It's
etc.
beautiful.
That
Yeah.
is. Thank you, Jane.
I love that. I don't know where that person lives, but that's beautiful. I wish I mean, that's the way that people used to live. There was someone who spoke for the salmon, and there was someone who spoke for the raven, and there was somebody who, like, that was your job, was to take care of those people, because humans can be very destructive. And until very recently, we understood that as a species. That was so easy for humans to get off track and just do terrible things. And that's why our societies were so careful and so slow, and gave us very particular roles that had to be filled. And the elders were in charge, and they told us that is destructive. You can't do that. And if you do it again, we're taking away all your toys, and all you're going to do is observe and not speak for a year because you've been so destructive. And you would have to do that. You were allowed to paddle up with the canoe, and you just had to sit there and watch because you hadn't learned as a child. We're going to try to teach you one more time. And honestly, in a lot of cultures, if you still didn't get it, that's it. You had to leave. And to
Oh
be
wow,
exiled was to die. So they might not kill you directly, but like, you're too sociopathic, we can't deal, you're out. And that was the end. So hopefully
wow.
that didn't happen very often, but I've certainly
Hopefully
read those
not.
stories. Well, mostly, why would you? I mean, why would you? You're there with people who love you. You've got this really great way of life. Everything is basically in harmony. Like, why would you mess that up?
Yeah, no kidding. I don't understand. I would. That seems just more simple and less stressful than the life we're living. Like just trying to chase
Oh,
our
well,
tails to.
that's the thing, right? Like, this is supposed to, all of this has been done for us. So we're like the top 5 or 10% of the humans on the planet. Like anybody in, Western country, whatever. We know that even living really simply, we're just consuming so much. All of this was done to make us happy. We're not even happy.
Yeah,
Half of all Americans have been on antidepressants. We're
right.
actually like the loneliest, saddest people who have ever existed.
No,
So it
agreed.
didn't even make us happy.
We're raised to be consumers. That's what we're raised to be. We're taught to be consumers from very little. You live to consume things and work to get those things to consume. It's just an insane lifestyle to me, and I'm tired of living it. Okay, so I don't want to take up all the commenters' time. So Brian is so sweet. He says, I'm looking forward to collab. So LOL. Lierre has me
The heart.
hooked. Big
You get the heart
hearts.
too. You
She
get the heart.
he's giving lots of hearts. There's 3 hearts in this sentence. Loves Bison. Recognized you from Deep Green Resistance.
Yay!
And yeah, just there's 3 hearts in that comment.
Very nice. Oh, good. Okay, we'll have a mutual heart session here. Okay.
Yay! Yeah, see, I have really great people in here. I
You
really
get
do.
good people. Well, good for you. You've managed to gather that around you.
I've tried really hard. Let's see.
Well, none of us
I,
can do it alone. Like the grass can't do it alone. The bison can't do it alone. The humans can't do it alone. Like we
I
need each other.
definitely can't. I need this community. I swear to
But
God,
you
I
lose
need
your
it.
mind otherwise. Like you can't be this far outside of the mainstream and have like save your sanity. You got to have somebody to talk to who at
Oh,
least sees most of the big picture the same way you do because it's huge.
it is. It
It's huge
is.
what's going on. It's
And it's
huge.
hard to
We could
accept.
kill the planet. Like it doesn't get any bigger.
Right? Okay, so Andre has a question. He says,
Okay.
can you give me an example of where the soil is not viable after years of farming?
My God, like pretty much everywhere. There's places in China right now that there's not even any flowering plants left. And the reason is because there's no pollinators. So there's nothing left. Like literally, if you want food, you have to hand pollinate
Oh,
all the food. Like that's how bad it is. The soil erosion right now coming out of China is so bad that it is literally it blows across the Pacific Ocean. You can see maps, like NASA has maps or NOAA, and you can see the maps. So here comes this big cloud of soil, and then it reaches the Rocky Mountains, and so then it comes down. So it hits the mountains, comes down. It's that soil from China is creating asthma in children in Denver, Colorado. That's how
and
bad it
that's
is.
why they're buying up U.S.
That's
farmland up
well
the
in Africa
yazoo.
too. It's
Yeah.
absolutely they're blowing up Africa. So places all around the Mediterranean, we think of them in these sort of rocky, slightly barren kind of undergrowth with maybe some goats kind of nibbling at the rocks. That is a completely man-made phenomenon. That the most of the Mediterranean was heavily forested, and then when you get into the Arabian Peninsula, it was oak savanna, so it was grasses and trees, incredibly lush. I mean, the cedars of Lebanon, there's one
Oh,
left,
yeah.
it's on the flag, that's it. But those forests were so dense that sunlight never touched the ground.
Wow.
And it's just, you can picture it now in your minds because, we see it on the news or maybe you've been there, but I mean, it's essentially semi desert. That is completely human created. Go to all the places where agriculture started, and that's what you find is desert. That's what we've done, and
I
all of
know.
that should be
Oh,
forested. North Africa, same deal. The
Derek
Sahara
talks
Desert, a
about that all
lot
the
of the
time.
Sahara Desert is created by humans, not all of it, but a whole bunch of it is. So, I mean, over and over, it's the same thing. It's no matter where
Yeah,
you
well,
go,
it can't
it's
last no matter what. We can't do that to everything. Okay, so Torstein, going south, says, did Leah detail what we should eat, or are we
mm.
just too many to eat anything?
No, the best. Well, you're going to eat something because you're alive and you're hungry, and that's fine. Like I'm not into like, oh my God, kill yourself, feel guilty. Like that's ridiculous. You're
Mm.
alive. It's a wonderful thing. Like every day, get up and be grateful. Be very grateful that you are here. It is so incredible.
I push
You've
eat
got this.
locally, like locally
Eat as
grown.
locally as you can. So first of all, cut way down on the fossil fuel miles. That's really important. But honestly, the number one question you can ask about your food is, does it support topsoil? Is it growing soil or is it destroying soil? And if
Right.
the food is growing soil, you're doing the right thing. Now you're gonna probably have to go out of your way for a lot of that food. And I'm lucky, I realize I live in a rural area. It's not hard for me to get grass-fed beef, grass-fed bison, pasture raised chickens. Some of this I've raised myself. Like it's not that hard for me. I know that if you live in a city, it's harder, but these products are becoming more and more available. So the more you can put your food dollars toward those things, the better off the world is. So, and if you want to get involved, helping to push this food, we need like on every single political level, we need help doing this. So a really great website to go to get started, eatwild.com, and that's by a woman named Jo Robinson. There's tons of really great information. She's into it. But you can also click on your state and it will show you all the grass-based farms near you. And you can go directly to those farms and buy directly from the farmer. And that's a really good thing to do. I know it's hard if you don't live, again, if you have to like go from a city or something, but you can
Yeah.
get all your food at once, and you can meet that farmer. And every dollar you give that farmer, it's that multiplier effect because you're supporting that entire local community. by buying it directly from the farmer. The farmer gets way more money, but then that farmer is going to spend it locally. So it helps the teachers, it helps the firefighters, it helps everybody who lives there. We know what happens when we spend locally, and it's really important. So the more you can do that, the better. So on a personal level, there's great things you can do. Grow your own too. I mean, if you want to get chickens in your backyard, it's such a
I've
fun thing to do.
I have
Love
chickens
chickens.
and I
Ducks, they're
grow
so
some stuff.
cute.
I love the ducks.
So much fun. Oh my God, you'll have such a great time. I don't know how much land you might have access to. Go in on a cow share with people. You can do that. You can buy a quarter of a cow or half a cow. It's yours. They will, you can get the milk if you want the milk. You can just get the meat if you want the meat, whatever. Like there's lots of ways to do that. But the more relationships you can build with local farmers, the stronger we all are. And then the next level up is to try to apply political pressure. Because right now, things like the Farm Bill are insane. All we are paying for as taxpayers, what we are buying is cheap carbohydrate that's destroying the soil. We're buying wheat and corn and
Yeah,
soy.
get
And
rid
there's
of
no
the
future in it. For us,
monofilters.
there's no future. Yeah. Instead, we should be putting those dollars toward helping farmers prepare their land, turn it back into prairies or savannas, get the appropriate ruminants on them. The amazing thing about grass-based farms is that most of those farmers can actually turn a profit the first year. And when the poor farmers who are essentially serfs breaking their backs and breaking their spirits trying to do annual monocrops. I mean, it's just there's no way to make a living at it. When they realize that there's a much better way out there that does actually repair their land and that does actually provide a decent living for them and their families, it's very appealing. And so more and more, we can get farmers educated and on board. We may or may not get help from the federal government. I mean, we could do so much more if we could get state and federal government on board. But even if we can't, just by directing our dollars to those farmers, they're very practical people. They see with their own eyes that it can be done and that they can actually make a decent living. Bingo, we've got them. So talk to your local farmers,
Oh, I
support
have
the
a
ones
good
who are doing it
relationship with
well.
the
It's
local farmers, so
such an important thing.
all
And
good here.
that's something you can do as an individual right now. Like you don't even have to get involved with like arcane Byzantine, like, terrifying legislative processes out there. Like just buy from local farms who are growing topsoil. Eatwild.com, best place to start.
Awesome. Thank you for that so much.
Yeah.
Sandy says she'd like to give up food.
She'd like to give up what?
She'd like to give up food. Sandy.
Oh, Sandy.
It's
Sandy, you
great.
have to eat. Eating is a wonderful thing. It's just one of life's pleasures, and it's good. It's
Yeah.
good to eat. It is. It's a wonderful thing to be alive, and you need food. It's how we participate in the world. Just remember, you're going to get eaten too. That's the thing. Like that is such a relief to me. Like one day, every last molecule is going back out there, and I'll be a bird, and I'll be a fox, and I'll be a bear, and it'll be amazing. I'll help feed their young. Like you'll do that too. It's inevitable whether you like it or not. So you might as well like see the beauty in it because it's there, and it's the
Oh,
only
yeah.
like don't fall into like depression and self-hatred, and it doesn't help. Like you were given this incredible thing, your
Oh,
life.
absolutely. Oh no, you don't have to worry about Sandy. She's got a
Oh,
great
good. Okay.
attitude.
Well, then, heart to
Don't worry. She has her own. She does Environmental Coffee House, another channel.
oh, fun.
A
Okay.
lot of people on here have their own channel, like going south. He
Nice.
keeps track of the ice, the
Yeah,
Arctic
yeah.
ice and all that.
That would
So
be hard. Yeah. Well, good
yeah,
for whoever that does that. That's a tough job.
yeah, he lives up in
Yeah.
Greenland. So there's
Oh my God.
multinational nationalities here on here, by the way. Snork Mitchell, he says I grow lemons in my basement. That's cool.
Lemons. That's fun.
No kidding.
But they should be Myers lemons. Those are the best lemons, which I
Okay.
know they're really tangerines or something, but they're so good.
So Myers, yeah, Myers lemons.
Myers lemons are the
Mitchell.
best. Yeah, I want a Myers.
Let's see. Let's see. It's so hard for me to go through. I have the worst eyes, anyways.
Oh
So
no, this is everybody under 40. Listen, because this is where it ends.
I know you get to point, and
You
mine.
lose it all bit by
Yes,
bit.
you.
Now, somebody said to me the other day, "Oh, the exchange is you exchange bodily health for wisdom." So I hope that's true,
I hope
because
so
man, the
too.
health just
Dang.
goes. So please, with the
Yeah.
other increase.
Especially the vision, and my eye
Oh
doctor
yeah.
said my close-up vision is 3 times worse than the average person my
Oh,
age.
I'm so terrible. I'm so sorry.
So yeah, terrible,
Oh
terrible
no, it just
vision.
sucks.
Okay.
What do
Let's
we got?
see. I hate this. Okay, so plus burning up the rainforest wipes out healing plant species we have yet to discover, Jilly. I know. Because how we get, like, there's always a cure for everything in nature, right?
You want to believe that. I mean, there's definitely paths to be considered that are there that could provide great cures. I don't know that everything's curable, but a
Well,
lot of
not
things are.
everything. Okay, but
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, a lot of what I have is not curable, trust me. But yeah, there's definitely
can't
plant
cure me.
medicines, and they really work for some people, and that it's incredibly horrible that we are destroying, the gifts of the plant people that they would share with us if we asked them respectfully, and
Oh,
instead
absolutely, but
them all
respect
out.
them.
Okay, what's your dog's name? I see a dog in the background.
That's tough.
I
Peggy,
need to know about the dog. Hi,
say
cutie.
hi, Gabby.
Oh
Say
my
hi,
God, you're so
Gabby.
cute. Look at that dog.
He's my boy.
Oh,
I
my
have
dogs are
another one here,
outside.
but you can't see. Man, wait. There's the other one. That's
Oh,
my fatty patty bear. He's like half
that
Basset Hound, half some.
face. Yeah,
I
that's a
know.
really cute kind of basset look. I had Great Pyrenees, but they're outside right now. I'm
Aw, I love
introducing
dogs.
them.
They're
Yeah,
fun.
no, dogs are the best people.
Yeah, they are. Okay, so let's see. Andre P, thank you. You're so sweet. He's a newcomer, but I love my new people too.
I knew
Buck
people.
Hermit's here. He says, "Hey, fun watching the vegans go crazy over that advice." We did a show on veganism on Wednesday. I'm
Oh,
not
that was.
vegan, and
Uh,
Sandy from Environmental Coffee House was on with me. She's not vegan, but then we had Trisha come, and she is vegan. So we had this big just talk about it. Like,
sure.
yeah, we
Needs to
do things
happen.
like that.
Needs to happen.
Absolutely. Okay, so I guess, is there anyone else who has a quick question? Because I'm getting tired now, and I'm sure Lierre is getting tired as well.
Well, what they probably don't know is we did talk and then it didn't work. So then we had to start over. So we've actually
Yeah.
been going a lot longer than you might know out there in audience land.
Yes,
We
yes.
are
We
tired.
we tried one time before there was no sound.
And it didn't work.
So
Then we had to
anyway,
do the whole thing over. So,
yeah. Okay. Anyway, Kent Dill, he says he has a Great Pyrenees.
oh, yay! They're the best dogs. No
Oh,
offense to yours, but no, they're fantastic. They're a whole breed of their own.
I
They're not
forgot
regular
about that.
dogs.
Andre has a possum. I seen it because we were on a stream together, and he
Okay.
put the camera over. There's this little possum
Oh,
eating out of a dish. Like,
oh, they're
oh my
so cute. I love
gosh.
them. I love
Oh,
them.
yeah. Okay, Ashiva says, be vegan. I love you, Ashiva. Even if you're vegan, you could be vegan. I mean, I have nothing against vegans at all. I never will. So,
Well, I don't know if you know, this is really my story. Is I was a vegan for 20 years and I destroyed my health, so I had to stop. And then I had to figure out why didn't it work. So one of my answers was really delving deep into,
mm,
so what is agriculture and why did I think this was saving the planet? Because in fact, it's not. It's honestly, it's the worst way to institute the values of veganism, which are supposed to be
I
about love, caring for life, compassion, justice,
I just worry about
sustainability, and
shipping in stuff. I mean, because
agriculture doesn't do that. Agriculture is the problem. So the basis of that vegan
oh,
diet is
Blake,
actually the roots of the problem. And I didn't know that when I was a vegan, and I've struggled 20 years. I wrestled with that angel, and at the end of the day, I had to face
it's
facts. I also tried to
hard.
grow my own food, and I
Thanks for
saw how
coming,
much.
Blake. Sorry, I just had to say Blake's leaving. I just wanted to tell him thank you for coming.
Okay, Blake, whoever you are, you get a heart.
Just wanted to tell him quickly hi because he's a sweetheart and a newbie. So here's
Yeah, newbies definitely need encouragement. It's like, this
yeah.
is a good place. Stay here.
What the hell's going on?
Oh, it's probably time to go.
My family's making lots of noise, people. Okay, guys, I love y'all. Race Lever, nice to see you. I
Bye.
and John Dow, awesome. The new faces, new names, sweet. But
Cool.
Kermit, I love having you here. Oh, Torstein, one more question. What
Okay.
is your view of Greta?
I'm really tired of everybody trashing on Greta, and I am so excited that young people, this is their future. I'm going to be dead before the worst of this happens.
He'll be
I'm
happy you
so
said that.
excited that, no, I really love that young people are getting involved, and I'm sorry that there's like so much focus on one, but she's a strong warrior, and we think we should be valuing her spirit and encouraging other, especially young women, to get involved. I was that impassioned when I was 16. I could so easily have been Greta if somebody had handed me a microphone. I mean, I
Oh,
was
I was,
insanely impassioned. I
I
mean,
was too.
like I was, I had to learn not to be so extreme. I mean, I was like, slightly way too far over, but that's okay. Like the world only changes because of extremists. I get it.
Oh
So
yeah,
I just think Greta, go for it, Greta. And she's young. So I think that, the
night
kinds of
Ben.
things that she's like trying really hard. She doesn't know that much. She can't know that much. She's only 16 or 17, whatever. So
I
It's
think
great.
she's
And
a
a lot
sweetheart.
of, I just think there's a lot of information we could help get her. And I think that she will evolve and learn the kinds of things that some of us have already figured out about, okay, the destruction of the planet, what's caused it, what's it about. And her analysis will evolve, and I'm sure she'll have
It already has.
to say. Like,
Yeah,
she's smart, she's young, she's learning. So I don't know why we have to like trash her. Like, let's just help her get better information, help engage with her. But she's building an incredible thing. Like, we have to see this kind of movement if
right.
anything's going to change. So like, let's just give all support to the young people because they need it.
Absolutely. Okay, so say we're going to go, threaten to leave, and everyone wants to ask a question. But Chris Foster, who's clear in Yorkshire,
Oh, nice.
so
I love that place. My sister lives in England, so I know
oh,
about it.
nice.
Yeah.
Do you believe that the establishment elites have an end game planned? And if so, that's funny to use the word end game. If so, will we be able to arrive at critical mass of awareness before they try to enact it?
I don't think they have like a super spooky plan. I just think the end game is accumulate as much private wealth as you can. And they're doing that. I mean, they have more power now than the pharaohs in Egypt could have dreamed of having this much power.
Right.
Caesar could have dreamed, like, it's not even on a scale that anybody could have imagined. And that's them. That's the 2%. They control everything. So, I mean, they're already done with their plan. That was it. Just control everything, have more money than you could ever dream of, and do whatever you want. And that's their plan. And that's what they've got. And that's ours. Like, they took
Yeah,
it from us. We
they
need to
did.
take it back. It really is just that simple.
As Shiva says, you're cool.
Well, I'm sure you're wonderful too, Shiva.
Oh, she is. She is a very fabulous person. So I guess we're going to say goodnight because I don't see any more
Okay,
questions, and I'm going to hurry up and run down
cool.
the list. Torstein,
All
always
right.
good to see you. Chris,
Hug to
John,
everyone. Thanks
Gray,
for coming. That was
Silverback,
fun.
Jilly, Ben.
Silverback, what a great name.
I do. I like that. That's fun. Okay, guys, you all have a very good night, and we will talk to you soon.